Hello and welcome to another booktube video from me, Lauren, from Lauren and the Books. And today there are loads of sirens. They fit. They're still here. Still going on. Drums. Today I'm going to be doing my August wrap-up. So this is a wrap-up of the books that I read in August. I had a fantastic reading month in August. Not only did I read quite a lot, I'm just going back to see how much I've read. I read some 5-star books, some majority 4 or 5-star books. I'm just going to count through. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 books I read in August, and like the majority of those were either 4 or 5-star books. And I am not generous with my 5-star book ratings. I do not give out 5-star books, but I've actually given out 2 5-star books this month, which is incredible. Incredible. So we'll start at the beginning of the month, and the first book that I read in the month of August was Jamaica Inn by Daphne du Maurier. I love this, so I'm so pleased I finally got round to reading some Daphne du Maurier. I made a video a while ago about saying that I'd never read any Daphne du Maurier, and I was going to do a sort of series where I read all the Daphne du Maurier I could and then wrapped it up. So far I've read one, Jamaica Inn, and I absolutely love this. I gave it 4 stars. I loved how atmospheric this was. The description was incredible. So it tells the story of Mary Yellen, whose mother dies, and she has to go and live with her aunt, who she hasn't seen for many years, and uncle. So her aunt is her mother's sister, and her uncle, who's not related to her by blood. And they live in a pub in Cornwall. I think it's in Cornwall, down that end of town. And there's some dodgy dealings going on there, and I won't say any more than that. So it was so atmospheric. The description of the environment is some of the best description of setting I've ever read in my life. It was amazing. I love the storyline and the characters. In particular, I loved Mary. I also love that she was always called Mary Yellen, because her surname was Yellen. And I just like calling people by their first name and their surname, so I like that as well. And I liked the love story in this as well. And I fucking hate love stories normally, so I really like the love story of this. I gave this 4 stars. I absolutely loved it. It has got me so pumped for the next Daphne du Maurier I'm going to read. I'm going to read Rebecca and Frenchman's Creek in September, and I can't wait to do that. And I just loved it. I absolutely adored it. And the only regret I have is that it's set in November and on the run up to Christmas in sort of like a bleak way, and I read it like boiling hot, laying in a park. So I would have loved to have read it in a bit more of an atmospheric time. So I do think this would probably be a reread of mine, and in that case I think I'll probably reread it maybe next year or the year after in November. But absolutely loved it, 4 stars. The next book is a book I don't have here with me. I got it out from the library, but that was The Tidal Zone by Sarah Moss, and that is probably the best book I've read this year. I adored The Tidal Zone. I won't go into too much detail here because I've done a review which I will link down below, but I love the interesting perspectives, the stories within the stories. The narrative was great. It was like a stream of conscious narrative, something that I hadn't read before. The perspective coming from a stay-at-home father's perspective was also something I hadn't read before. Wonderful flow, great characters, brilliant building of tension. I adored it. So basically it tells the story of a young girl, Miriam, who has an episode at school which makes her stop breathing and her heart stops, so basically she dies, and then they don't know why this has happened, so she's in hospital, and it's her family dealing with that and the fact that this could happen again, and how do you live with the fact that somebody could drop dead at any moment. Told alongside the father is doing some work on the rebuilding of Coventry Cathedral, so told alongside that. Bloody loved it. 5 stars, absolutely adored it. As I said, I will link my review down below, and I urge you to go and look at that review, and I urge you to go and read it because it was absolutely wonderful. The next book I read, not so good, but one of the only bad books that I read this whole month, and that was Harry Potter and the Cursed Child Parts 1 and 2. This is written by Jack Thorne. I've also done a review on this. This just wasn't Harry Potter for me. It's not Harry Potter. It's not Harry Potter. It's lacking the description, and it wasn't written by J.K. Rowling, so it's not Harry Potter. I've done a review on this as well, and I will link that down below because I go into a bit more tangent of it, but I thought I wanted answers and I didn't. When I wrote this down, I thought it was a 3-star for me. God knows what I was thinking then. Then when I reviewed it, I was like, oh, maybe it's a 2-star. Now looking back, I feel like it was a 1-star. It's just gone down and down and down and down. But yeah, I will link the review down below so you can all go and have a little look at that. The next book I read was a short story collection, and that was Barbara the Slut and Other People by Lauren Holmes. This was a pretty good selection of short stories. I have a bit of a funny deal with short stories in that I can't always remember them, like, so I'll read a short story collection and then when I go back to them I'm like, oh yeah, I think I like this, I can't really remember, and I don't know what I can do to resolve that. I should probably make more notes. I've got here, I particularly like the one told from the perspective of the dog. I did like the one told from the perspective of the dog. And I said, all in all, very good collection, very sexual. But yeah, I gave this 3 stars. But yeah, I think I've got a bit of a funny relationship with short stories in that I just don't remember them afterwards. I really don't. There's got to be something I can do. What can I do? But yeah, 3 stars for that. The next book I read was an audiobook, and it was My Name is Leon by Kit DeWall. This was wonderful. I loved it. I gave it 4 stars. The narration was done by Lenny Henry, and he did a fantastic job. It was amazing. His accents and his voices were all spot on. So it tells the story of a young chap, Leon, who goes into care. Him and his brother, their mother can't look after them anymore. She has lots of mental health issues, and they go into care. And unfortunately, his brother is white, and Leon is mixed race. His father is black, and his mother's white. And Leon's brother gets adopted before he does, and he's a baby, and people want white babies and people don't want mixed race children. It's also set in the 80s, and it just tells the story of Leon trying to cope with this and being in care, and I adored it. It had me crying, it had me laughing. I was like driving to work like, oh, and then laughing, and it was just wonderful. In terms of storyline, I thought it covered some really, really delicate topics really, really well, especially like from the perspective of a child as well. So it covered race, adoption, mental health, UK's care system. They were all handled brilliantly. And I cried because I was sad, and I cried because I was happy, and I just loved it. And I don't think it's that long. The audiobook was only something like 9 hours, which is really unusual. Like normally, audiobooks are like 15 hours plus. So this to be quite a short one. I haven't actually seen the book, but I understand it's quite a short little book. But I adored it, and I think it's a really nice, easy read, and just really covers some great topics. So go and read it. The next book I read was The Master of Knots by Massimo Carlotto. This was kindly sent to me by the publisher Europa. I love Europa's books. They have these gorgeous French flaps, and they're just really, really nicely published. And I love a yellow cover, so it's all going. This is really rude though. I didn't quite realise how rude that is. This was a really fast, easy read for me, and it was a new genre in Mediterranean noir, which I'd never read before. I quite enjoyed it, and I think I will revisit maybe some Mediterranean noir. I thought it was a great translation as well, and in particular I liked the references, like things that you would only say in Italy. So for instance, like the chap who you sort of follow, who is the investigator in this story, says that his legs are as white as mozzarellas because he hasn't been out in the sun, and somebody gets shot and they say that he's like peppered with bullets like a pasta strainer. And I was like, oh, they're really good, like Italian things that you wouldn't really read in other fiction, so I like that. Lots of references to food, which are great, but the actual crime solving part of this was quite small, so I wouldn't go to this being like, oh, I want a crime book, I'll go to this. It was good. It was good. I enjoyed it. It was 3 stars, and yeah, it's just a crime, like 3 private investigators solving crimes really, but that's like a very small bit of it. There's a lot of political aspects about the corruptness of the Italian police and things like that. So yeah, interesting, different to anything I'd read before, but enjoyed nevertheless. The next book I read was, and this was also sent to me, this was sent to me by Faber, and Faber, thank you very much, Faber and Faber. This is The Lesser Behemoth by Emma McBride. My goodness me, I went on a journey with this book, X Factor journey right here. I started off hating this. I was doing this as a buddy read with a few people on, a few booktubers on Voxer, and I got 16 pages in and I was like, girls, I do not know what's going on. I don't think I'm going to be able to carry this on. I was reading bits out to David, like, what on earth do you think's happening here? And he was like, that's got to be wrong. They've sent you the wrong copy. And it wasn't like that at all. And a few of them said, no, you've really got to commit to it. I spoke to Simon from Savage Reads. He said when he last read A Girl is a Half-Formed Thing by Emma McBride, he just cracked on and read it literally in 2 days. I read a few bits out to myself. I really like committed to reading it in a really quick space of time, and I ended up loving it. So it's a really hard narrative to follow to start with, and then you get really into it, and it's like a train of thought narrative, but not in any sort of like, it's not simplified at all. Like, you've got to work to understand it, which I really loved. Once I got into it, I adored it. I gave it 4 stars. I've never read anything like it before, and the story unfolded was perfect. Things like you don't find out the girl. So it tells the story of a girl who's moved over from Ireland. She wants to be an actor, and she's going to drama school, and she meets an older gentleman and falls in love with him. But you don't find out her name. You don't find out his name, and it just like unfolds, and then you hear like his story but told through her narrative, and it was just perfect. I thought it really added to the whole story and the feel of the book. And I really like, this is just goes to show that I really like, I always used to just power through books and be like, I'm not giving up on a book. And this book, like 16 pages in, I was like, I'm gonna have to give up. And I took it to work, and I was reading it on my lunch, and it was the only book I had with me at work, and I always read on my lunch, and I was like, oh, I'll just carry on. And I'm so glad I did, because I adored it, and I really, really loved it. I just loved it. It was 4 stars. I really, really loved it. Well done, Emma McBride. The next book I read is a book that I haven't got here with me. It was the next 5-star book of the month, which was The Museum of You by Carrie Spray. So this has been doing the rounds on BookTube recently, and I adored this. I won't go into like loads of detail here, because I'm sure you've all heard lots of reviews about it, but it tells the story of a young girl whose mother died when she was much, much younger. Oh, hairs. Her mother died when she was much younger, and her dad's never really spoken about it, and she finds things that belong to her mum, and she decides to make a museum of her mum, and it's told from her point of view, Clover, and her dad's point of view, who's Darren. But I really loved like the touching parts of Darren remembering his and Becky's relationships, and like there was heartbreaking parts of Clover trying to mourn a mother that she'd never met. Mrs. Mackerel, who was their next door neighbour, is hands down one of the best characters I've ever read in my life. She was hilarious. She was so, so funny. I absolutely loved her and loved the book. It just had everything, and it meant everything. It was very similar for me, like a feeling to me, as I got when I was listening to My Name is Leon. Like, I laughed in it, I cried in it, just everything happened, and I adored it. And Mrs. Mackerel forever. So that was very exciting. Oh, the next thing I read was a tiny, tiny little book, an essay of The Gifts of Reading by Robert Macfarlane. This was 1 star. It just wasn't for me. I flew through it like, oh God, I just want to get through this. I didn't really enjoy it. But lovely front cover. So 1 star, it just wasn't for me. The next thing I read was a play that the lovely Amy Jane Smith had lent me. This is Beached by Melissa Bubnick, which is a play that was performed at the Marlow Theatre, where I am heading to in no less than an hour to go and watch Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. It was a great play. It was a really different content to any plays I'd read before, or even like anything I'd seen before, about a chap who is morbidly obese and is trying to turn his life around by losing weight, getting a job, etc, etc. And he falls in love with one of the producers on the TV show. I think she's a producer, or she might be a helper or something. She's something to do with the TV show, and I thought the characters were really put across well in a really short space of time. Take note, Jack Thorne, by the way. there was less pages in this than the Harry Potter, and they managed to get the characters across well. I would have loved to have watched this at the theatre, and I definitely need to watch more things at the theatre. And thank you very much to Amy for lending it to me. Mwah! I had then read, which has also gone back to the library, Like Water for Chocolate by Laura Esquivel. It was like this book was written for me. It had everything. It had loads of food references, actual recipes, family sagas, and just the right amount of magical realism for me. So it tells the story of oh my goodness me, I've forgotten her name, and I haven't got the book here. Oh God. So it tells the story of a girl who falls in love with a chap, and she's the youngest daughter in the family, and the family tradition is that the youngest daughter in the family will always look after the mother until they die. But she falls in love with this chap, and she can't marry him because she's the youngest girl in the family, so he marries her sister. So the mother, who is a complete evil bitch, makes him marry the sister. So then it's just like this unrequited love story the whole way through. Like, she has to love her sister's husband, and then they have a child, and she has to love that child as a nephew and niece, and it's just loads going on, and I really, really loved it. It just, all the references were really, really helpful, like really things that I love. I loved the layout of the novel, set into months. It really appealed to my sort of like OCD nature, and this was really like fun, quick read for me. I really can't wait to watch the film. It's been made into a film. It had great characters, like really, really G'd up the hate for some of them. I mentioned earlier that her mother was a complete biatch. But the ending fell a bit flat for me, so in that sense I gave it 3 stars. It would have been a 4 star, but the ending I was like, oh come on, you could have done better. The next book I read was The Girl with All the Gifts by M.R. Carey. This I've lent to my friend Alex because he was desperate for something to read, and I said, I think you like this, it's a bit sci-fi. I think this will make a great film. It is being made into a great film. I can't really tell you much now because there's quite a big twist, but it's about a girl, Melanie, who's in a school, and that is all I can tell you. Oh God, I can't tell you anything without ruining it, but yeah. I think it'll make a great film. I would have enjoyed it even more had I not known the twist. I knew the twist before going in, that I was like, oh, I sort of knew that was coming. I like the multiple perspectives, and within chapters it had multiple perspectives, and it flowed really well, and it was obviously written very well, that I was able to just pick that up and be like, oh, well now it's the perspective of Melanie, and now it's the perspective of Miss Justino. And good characters. The thing is though, by the end I felt like it had gone on a bit too long for me, so I was like, it could have been cut down by about 50 pages I think for me. But yeah, in general I gave it 3 stars and quite enjoyed it. The last book I've read this month is, oh, come here little guy, The Panopticon by Jenny Fagan. I read The Sunlight Pilgrims by Jenny Fagan earlier this year, gave it 5 stars, absolutely loved it. This I didn't love as much, I've given 3 stars. I still enjoyed it, I think Jenny Fagan writes really well. It tells the story of Anae? I think her name's Anae. And she's been put into a sort of like child home. She had an altercation, although you never really actually find out what happened, between her and a police officer who is now in a coma. They're not sure if she's going to die. It tells her relationships with her. She's been in and out of care her whole life. She didn't know her mother. Her foster mother died in horrific circumstances, and it's her relationship with these girls in the care home, with the chaps in the care home, her ex-boyfriend who's in prison, and yeah, it was also told, like, it has a lot of like Scottish dialect in here as well, which I found really interesting and really helped me get into the feeling of the book and that it was set in Scotland. I enjoyed it. I just didn't love it as much as I love The Sunlight Pilgrims, and had I not read so many 4 or 5 star books this month, maybe this would have been a 4 star, but the other books I loved a lot more. So those are the books that I read in the month of August. It was a fantastic month in August. I absolutely never read so many good books in all my time doing BookTube in 1 month. 2 5-star books, one of which was the best book of the year, and like My Name is Leon could have easily been a 5-star as well. I love that too. So that is what I read in August. What did all y'all get up to reading in August? Have any of you guys read any of these books? What did you think? What did people... I don't feel like I've heard much about My Name is Leon on BookTube. I was talking to Mercedes about it, and Simon said about it as well, but I don't think I've heard many other people talk about it. But these are the books I read. I hope you've all had a wonderful reading month in August. It's September! It's autumn! Hurrah, hurrah, hurrah! And I will see you all soon. Hopefully I'll have a jumper on by then because it'll be September. Bye!